Welcome, everyone. My name is Mary Ma, and I'm a member of the Kellogg Alumni Relations team. Thank you for joining us today for this fireside chat between Dean Corneli and Professor Philip Kotler. Today's presentation will last about 1 hour. We encourage you to submit any questions for our speaker at any time via the Q&A icon that's located at the bottom of your screen. We will address audience questions towards the end of the program. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on Kellogg's YouTube channel. With that, I'm very happy to turn it over to Dean Francesca Corneli to start our program.
Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to have this is one session I was really looking forward to, and it's really showing off Kellogg at its best. And it is my pleasure today to welcome Professor Emeritus of Marketing, Phil Kotler, to our conversation. And I'm going to introduce him, and I was thinking right now, if there is one person in the world who doesn't need an introduction, that is Phil. But, you know, let me just mention a few things, because if there is one person who really exemplifies the global power, visibility, and impact that Kellogg had throughout its history, that is him. He's incredibly prolific. He's written 86 books, which is, you know, I can't even think how he found the time. And also the most used marketing book in graduate business school worldwide. It's marketing management, analysis, planning, implementation, and control. I'm sure all of you on the video today have studied it. It's consulting for IBM, General Electric, AT&T, Honeywell, Bank of America, Merck, so many more. To me, and he also is known really globally, right? He travels extensively, Europe, Asia, South America. He's advised government on how to develop and position the skill sets and resources for global companies. I mean, we can go on and on, but to me, what I can tell you, when I was named Dean, I received so many emails of congratulation. And one common theme is, this is where Phil Kotler is. I haven't told Phil, but that was the comment. And he knows some people introduced me to him as like, oh, I have the honor to introduce you, Phil Kotler. You will join Kellogg. It is such a powerhouse. And also what I love is the impact in the real world. Is a business school has an impact of where the real world is moving. Anyway, you didn't come here to listen to me, but to him. So let me start welcoming. Hello, Phil, and thank you for giving your time to come here.
Well, Francesca, it's such a pleasure to be invited to meet you again and to actually contact and be in contact through you with so many of our Kellogg alumni. I heard there may be 1,700 people listening to this. Now, I was recently in China, and I don't want to make a comparison, but I was told after the event that 7 million people heard me. But that's a very different situation, because we don't even have 7 million Kellogg people, but we will have more. So this is a chance to share ideas. And, you know, I'm a lifetime learner, and I'm always correcting myself too, or refining my knowledge. And that is really about the number of books. You may say, how do you write so many books? Well, first of all, I write many of them with other people. But in addition, I don't watch football. I mean, I could easily enjoy the game and do on occasion, but I do manage my time very carefully, because I'm always interested in a lot of other things that I want to pay attention to. So I understand we're going to have some good questions, and I'll share my answers.
Yes, I'll start asking you a question, and then I'm sure we'll get more from the. I already see questions appearing on the chat. Now, let me ask you. You know, as obvious, right, we are in the middle of the pandemic, and this has a lot of consequences. What has most surprised you or impressed you about how marketers have responded to the pandemic?
Well, so many companies have been closed down or hurt. And so it was very important that their marketers figure out how to save as much of the business as possible during the COVID pandemic. So if you just look at specific examples, groceries. Fortunately, groceries had to remain open. And they would really like people to come into the grocery, but the marketers for groceries knew that basically they can still serve a lot of people without people coming in and spacing themselves and so on. They did everything, of course, to make it possible to come in with masks. It was insisted on, and also spatial distance, and maybe limiting the number of people coming in at a time. But in addition, they added everything they could as an effort to apply disinfectants, make sure all the food is handled very carefully with gloves and with people who wear masks who handle the food, and that food could be picked up. As a matter of fact, Instacart was developed as the idea that you can, the store could have people who can pick out the food for you if they had a list given to them. And then the food is moved to outdoors to the back of a car that someone might have. Hotels have been hurt badly, and their marketers are busy looking for other ways to use the space and for groups. Some hotels are the place where you go to get your shots now, where there's a big line of people waiting to get their COVID vaccine. And maybe sometimes new types of uses can be made of hotel space. It turns out that with even take this situation where there's one person who owns 214 shopping malls, and they've been sort of empty. And well, shopping malls, they're now talking to Amazon. The marketing idea was this, that maybe there's so much fulfillment to do with this very big, huge store called Amazon, that basically you can use the shopping mall space for that. And maybe shopping small space can be used for educational purposes too. So marketers in these companies are kind of smart about ways to keep the companies going and keep selling and sending and delivering. Because the mantra of a marketer is this, our job is to create value. Our job is to create, communicate, and deliver value to a target market with profit for us and satisfaction for the customers. So these marketers in all these industries are very busy doing what they can.
That's very interesting. And oh, sorry, you were.
Nope.
No. So I just actually want to ask you one more question about the COVID-19, given that as I said, you've been advising government, and we are currently hearing that large number of people are opting not to take the COVID-19 vaccine. What advice would you give to the public health official for how to better market the vaccine, or even about preventative measures like mask wearing, social distancing? It's clearly more difficult than one would have thought to get this message across.
Yes, it is surprising that we have two big challenges: getting people to wear a mask along with social distancing, and the second is to take the vaccine. We always approach a question like that by asking what are the reasons for the resistance, let's say, to a mask. Some people, in other words, let's say we find 5 different reasons given for not wearing the mask, including the reason freedom. I don't like how I look in the mask. I don't think the mask helps. I don't even believe there's an epidemic. Oh, now you shouldn't have one way to deal with this. You should have 5 ways to deal with it if there are 5 different groups. Or let's say if 3 of the 5 reasons are very important, you do the research to figure out what you can say. And facts are not enough. It's an emotional kind of thing. So can you get some people who they respect to wear the mask, to say why it's important to them. So marketers have to think through that for the idea of taking the vaccines. There's been a lot of misinformation that the vaccine is going to make you sterile, or it's going to change your brain speed or something. What are the reasons? And marketers will find out very quickly, and then figure out what is the best way to respond, and who does the speaker think, who does the person resisting the shot, who does that person admire? Who would make a difference in their mind? Because it isn't the person who's the marketer. It has to be their social group. So we get into group relationships and networks for these problems. Okay.
I love your answers. It's so interesting. It's really insightful. I hope they'll start listening to you more. Let me ask you a slightly different question. You have a new book, Marketing 5.0, which focuses on how marketers can use technology to meet customer needs.
Yes.
What are one or two of the most important takeaways that marketers should be thinking about in terms of digital transformation?
Yes, that's the new book called Marketing 5.0. And you may ask what was 4.0, 3.0. It's,
Yes.
Of course, ways to every few years assess what's going on, not in a textbook form, because I'm on my 16th edition of marketing management now, and that's a big job to assess for the last 3 years, what has changed. But in this particular book, 5.0, the emphasis we wanted to give is to technology for humanity, that there's new technologies. We want to make the point that it's essential for a company to go digital and to move as fast as they can in getting their processes and their artificial intelligence and so on digital. And so what are some of the new technologies? Well, I would ask of your company, have you really developed some, what do we call, what about, have you ever used drones in your business? Is there room for using drones? I've heard of some very interesting things that happen with drones. What about the use of virtual reality? Let's say you're making a new product, but you don't want to invest too much. You're not sure there's strong demand. Can't you actually make it available to be seen with those special glasses, because you designed an experience of that product and the look of the product and its use, so they can see it? And if you ask good questions like, did you get impressed with that product? Do you think you would buy it at a price of X, Y, and Z? So all of that goes on before you've ever committed resources, really big resources, to create the product. I wonder if your company has a chat box idea. A chat box means it's almost like Alexa or Siri that would, I could go to the chat box and ask, where did you make that product? What country did it come from? But the chat box could answer a lot of questions. In fact, in some cases, psychiatrists are nervous about chat box.
I didn't get that. Could you try it again?
Yes.
I thought so.
I'm sorry, do you know what that was? That was my Siri.
It's wonderful.
Here, because I talked about Siri, so she got in on the line. But a chat box is sort of Siri, you know. So there's a lot of questions about whether you are using the technologies. But the main thing is this, that consumers are changing a lot. There's such a difference now between boomers and Zoomers. Zoomers, we know more as the millennials. Let's just think about what's happening in terms of food habits and preferences. Right now, more people are beginning to say, I really want to eat nutritious food. I don't want a lot of salt and sugar and fat in my diet. And in fact, I don't want to eat meat. And by the way, the industry has an answer to that. We have now lab meat developed. You would fool you about where it came from, which means that the young people are saying, do we need all these cows? And don't we have a problem of sustainability too? And we have so much to feed to these animals, and all we do is kill them. That's how we show our appreciation, and so on. So eating mindsets are different now. Clothing mindsets. You're going to wear more casual clothes. By the way, just the fact that so many workers now are working at home, they become very casual about what they wear. But even before that, we used to have Friday casual clothing at work and so on and so forth. So even having a car is being questioned about, especially if you're in a very big city and it's very hard the traffic is very bad. So all of these consumer behaviors have to be realized, especially if you're going to go after the younger consumers to understand them. So then every business is changing. Businesses are now seeing a change from what we call shareholder thinking to stakeholder thinking. And by the way, one of the most important stakeholders are your employees. And I'm doing a big study now about whether I find there's a disturbing piece of information that maybe over 50% of employees are unhappy in their work. They're not happy to be working. It's not selfishness. They would rather be challenged, but they're not being challenged, or for many reasons, they have a bad boss, or whatever it could be. So the question is your company actually caring about those people who give their time, and what benefits have you been giving them? Now, in the gig economy, we've been terrible to people. Those people who no health insurance, low wages, but even in normal big companies, there's a need for going over better the benefits. And actually, there's a movement that I'm studying, and that is how to get your employees to be owners, to own. If you're a stock company, what you can do with an ESOP to get our workers not only to be a part owner by having a buying plan for buying shares in the company, but also for retirement purposes. The ESOPs are really set up so that basically the workers can save some money while they're at work, put it aside. It's not going to be taxed until later on. And they build up a plan for their retirement or for some health problem they have, and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of change in consumers. There's a lot of change in companies and what they care about. I mean, we'll talk about sustainability and social responsibility, I'm sure. And then there's the political situation. So you got to, if I write another book, it's partly because I want to understand myself, the changes that are going on.
That's very interesting. Now, let me ask you, do you think, however, the pandemic has sped up this? And do you think the lessons of the pandemic will actually reduce the marketers' reliance on new technologies?
I don't think so. We're blessed by having this opportunity using a thing called Zoom, which has really saved us during the pandemic, because we would have really gone crazy, not seeing anyone else or getting close to anyone else. And now people are getting into a habit, whether it's Zoom, Facebook, or WhatsApp, whatever. I don't know if they want to go back to social relationships. I know we all want parties and we want to sit at a bar sometime and so on, but frankly, there will be habits at the end of COVID that will stay with us that are kind of new. That is eating more smartly, dressing differently, and doing more communication with our cell phones and our Zoom situations.
And so I know in the book, and you mentioned a bit, you cover also artificial intelligence. Now, as a marketers, what do you think, what key concepts does one need to understand about AI?
Yeah, well, I think a key concept is to understand what it is to put together an algorithm. An algorithm. That's about one of the most fascinating things about AI within the AI tools and so on. For example, how many people realize that decisions are increasingly being made by algorithms and not by sitting down with a person or a group deciding on something? Let's say Kellogg has an admissions policy. Now, you've learned at Kellogg a great deal about what makes good students to admit. Now, all of that data from the past can be analyzed from the point of view of gaining insights. It's called machine learning. And you can get insights into which people really benefit the most from a MBA education coming from Kellogg. And in the end, have a algorithm which takes this information and it advises you as dean, maybe even on a number scale, there's a 95% chance this person will be very well served by Kellogg and enjoy the experience, versus another candidate, maybe 30%. So we are trusting more to analytics and algorithms. And the same thing happens with loans for a bank. A bank will collect some information from you, but the decision whether you're going to get the loan is coming out of an algorithm that has in it a very logical set of paths backed by data on the experience of how many people who took out loans with those conditions succeeded to pay back or didn't pay back. So that's very exciting.
I agree. Now, I want to ask you something. I'm really excited, in the area of sustainability, because I love you're a proponent of the idea of demarketing, which encourages people to use less of something, including limited resources like water or fossil fuels you were mentioning before. Is there anyone which is doing this particularly well right now? And what would you like to see policymakers and corporations start doing in this regard?
Well, I think we're going to find that demarketing is going to be partly almost as important as marketing in the future. I got the original interest in it by watching what was happening to California when there was not enough water to do two things: keep the wine and the grapes growing, which takes a lot of water, and feeding the people in LA and giving water to the people in LA and San Francisco and so on. There's a conflict there. And crazy things were being said, like, don't shower anymore. If you're going to shower with 2 or 3 people at a time. Save water. And then the companies were told to save water, and the government had to save more water. So demarketing is what? It is using the 4 Ps in reverse. Let's take other cases like overfishing or over timbering. The whole safety of our air and our planet is going to be dependent on not being over polluted and so on and so forth. So down in Brazil, there's a lot of work going on now, cutting down timber and we need the timber to keep us from getting a warm planet. I won't go into all the details. So demarketing is, what can I do to get people to use less of the product or like it less? What can I do to price it higher so they won't be so tempted to use it? What can I do to make it less accessible to them? They'd have to work harder to find out where it is. And what can I do to de-promote it? In other words, use promotion to de-promote it. And it works. And we have many, many examples, empirical, well researched examples of demarketing working when needed.
That is really interesting. Let me ask you, continuing in these issues about, sustainability and what to do. You've written also about the soul searching you've done in terms of the marketer's role, helping companies sell as much as possible. Again, not the demarketing, right? Given how that consumerism has been so harmful to our earth and climate. Now, just want to know a bit about have you been thinking through this dilemma? Where have you landed? And what would you say to other conflicted marketers about how to approach this issue?
Yes, it's a real problem for the occupation called marketing, because we believe that we're there to help sell good products to as many as people as possible for as many times as we can do it, more and more and more. Now that was all right, and that was the theme until we recognized that to some extent we're hurting the planet, that the planet has limited resources, and that maybe we have to we all want to save the planet. In fact, it changed the goals that companies say they care about. They always care about profit, and they should. They should care about people, profit, people. They should care about the planet. They should care about purpose. And purpose is coming up in a big way now. Namely, what is the purpose of your company? Yes, you're making money, but that can't be defined as the purpose. I go back often to Peter Drucker, who surprised people in a number of ways. He's the father of management. And he would say that the purpose of a company is to create customers. He should have added satisfied customers or happy customers. And every company has to figure out, what is it about? And by the way, each company should be clear about its values and what it cares about. And I just wrote a book called Brand Activism. And the brand itself is more than a name. It always has been more than a name. I mean, when Disney means family entertainment. Nike, athletic exercise, excellence, athletic excellence. So a brand has those kinds of meanings, but I want it to be a story about the things that the company cares about, really, and how it affects me. If I care about the same things, I'm going to be connecting more with that company and most of what it does, because their values are transparent. They care about the planet. They care about what. And so how can companies basically share more about what they are really about? And that's what we're seeing happening today. For example, Unilever is one of my favorite companies. And when Paulman was the leader, and he's one of the most exceptional CEOs, he retired recently. But Paul said, for next year, I would like our Unilever to grow by 4%, and I want it to create 0 carbon. He did it. He did it. In other words, he wants growth, but he wants growth without hurting the planet. So we have to look at these companies and admire them. And by the way, they're not only doing the right thing, they're more profitable because more people connect with this idea of social responsibility. And I wish we could, before we pick up any brand in the grocery, you see any brand, something comes in my mind exactly about how much do they care about sustainability, which means who are the good guys, the good brands, and the not so good brands. And I'll buy according to the good brands. Well, that will make more brands good because the ones that aren't good don't get as much sales. So you're not free to be ungood. Once consumers get so educated to choose the good guys, you can't be a bad guy for long.
I understand. This is amazing. And I see a lot of questions also in this space, but before I get to the question, I just want to ask a couple of questions about your career, which has been so amazing. And so first thing I want to ask you, when you wrote Marketing Management in 1967, did you expect to become the most widely used marketing textbook in the world? Did you have a sense that was going to be?
I knew it would be a great success or a great failure. There was a reason for each belief, but just a little background. I came to Kellogg over 50 years ago with Don Jacobs, the amazing dean.
Yes.
And Don said, Phil, you have an MIT degree as an economist, a PhD from MIT. Do you want to teach marketing or do you want to teach economics? Because he gave me the choice. I said, everyone knows what economics is, and that's economics theory is going to continue to be debated, but it's not going to be so different. But marketing, boy, does that need work. Because most of the textbooks I had seen on marketing were descriptive. A salesman does this, a wholesaler does that. A lot of facts and so on. And I said that there's much more that could be done. So when I decided I could write a better book than I saw existing, I said, it's got to be based on four things. It must bring in economics, the theory I know so well. It has to bring in consumer behavior. It has to be rich in consumer behavior, study findings and studies and methodologies. And it should be rich in organizational theory. And it should be rich in strategic thinking. So putting those platforms together, I wrote this book and then prayed. And it turns out that when it was introduced, I got a call from Prince Hall, and they said, well, you did it. This will become the best book in the field. And I started to wonder why that I was so lucky for that to happen. And it turns out that the best explanation I can give is the book made the profession feeling better about itself. It puts science into marketing, because now they really could stand next to the guys in finance and say, we've got a science too. And then every few years we have to update what's happening. Marketing changes so much in short periods of time that I even have big diagrams showing by year new ideas that have occurred and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Now, I just also want to ask one more question. That is, okay, we talked about how many books, articles, projects you have. Can you tell us what are some of the accomplishments that you are most proud of, and how do you choose the next project you have? How do you go about choosing it?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I am proud of something that I created called social marketing. But it wasn't societal marketing, which I also worked on. It's social marketing. And the only thing I would have liked to have added the word social cause marketing, the marketing of social causes. Causes being poverty, income distribution problems, pollution. So in creating, along with Professor Jerry Jerry Zaltman, we wrote an article that where we said, it was very interesting how it happened. Both of us were reading an article that said, why can't you sell brotherhood the way you sell soap? Marketers are so good at selling soap. Can't they sell good brotherhood feelings? Well, we knew that's a very difficult thing, but we began to think that we could sell a lot of things that normally aren't sold. For example, cigarette smoking. People are hurting themselves smoking. Can we not convince them to move, especially prevent young girls and young guys from starting the habit, let alone if you have the habit, how do you help them get off of the habit? And we found out we could do a lot, and we started to organize the idea of social marketers. And we had meetings in Clearwater, Florida, year after year, with conferences started usually with about 400 people who wanted to learn. They were marketers, but they wanted to be social marketers. Then we had maybe 1,500 people coming that annual meeting in Clearwater. And today, I think there's between 3,000 and 6,000 social marketers around the world. I mean, we've trained people from Brazil and from Sri Lanka and so on and so forth. So I'm proud of that we have a great and extensive literature for any social cause problem you have on empirical work that was done and was successful to slow down the problem. In fact, Nancy Lee and I, she's a terrific social marketer, will come out with the 100 best examples of social marketing where all the results really tackled the problem beautifully. The second thing I'm proud of was demarketing, and that I worked out with Sidney Levy, who many of you listening to me may remember. He was one of the great faculty members, and Sid and I we wrote an article that Harvard published called "Demarketing." Yes, demarketing. Sid wrote another one. He wanted to call it "Furthering" rather than demarketing. But anyways, I liked the work we did on that. I also did some work on atmospherics, which was the concept that when we go into a place, it has an atmosphere, and the atmosphere can be designed. And so I got very much into this idea of designing atmosphere. And right now, design is becoming very close to marketing. Either marketing as part of the design thinking, or design thinking is becoming part of marketing. So there's a number of things that came along that interested me greatly.
Now, I have to tell you that there are so many questions. I apologize in advance to everybody. I can't ask all the questions, but let me get, I see so many. One is, do you believe brand longevity is being reduced and we tend to see more and more new brands while traditional brands become less relevant?
Well, brands, as strong as they are when they're introduced, we get a little tired of them, and they're very busy. There's even an article that Sid Levy and I wrote about a brand rejuvenation. I think the title of the article is Brand Rejuvenation, when a brand has. But the questionnaire is asking, has brand longevity slowed down? And I would think so. We're in a very fast moving society, and there's a lot of, not only are your competitors 2 or 3 other firms. In fact, there's a theory in marketing that most industries will only have 3 big firms eventually. Jagdish Sheth, a great marketer, has provided some information on that, but that any student can attack a brand. There's a thing I call direct-to-consumer marketing. I get an idea as a person who knows a little digital stuff, and I choose a target market. I choose a brand that I can do better than, and I will buy the names and emails of a group of people, because there are brokers where you can get lists of left-handed people, tall people, women, men, whatever. And so a lot of social entrepreneurs and kids are around to spot opportunities, and we encourage them to. And they can set up a little business by themselves or with a team. And that's how we ended up with Facebook. And that's how Facebook was about meeting girls, basically, by a guy and a few friends who wanted to write something new. So I would, short answer is, yes, brand longevity is probably never to be taken for granted, and it's shortening.
Interesting. And there's a lot of question here towards the same theme, which is, what key skills do marketing professionals need to have developed to be successful these days? And this is combined with some people who are saying is that we are marketers from 20 years ago. How do we convince the young marketers that we are still relevant? But this
That's 2 or 3 questions. But what is the main thing to go into the training of a marketer? The main skill set they have to have is they have to have empathy. Many things have been said that you must be the customer you're trying to sell to. You've got to be, so you got to walk in the customer's footsteps and in the customer's experience. And remember, it goes to a certain thing that, yes, marketers are supposed to create value, but who defines the value? Not the marketer. If too many marketers fail when they think they know what value is to the customer. And if you don't test what it really means, what the customer really regards as value, you're going to fail. So I think one skill is an empathic kind of caring about other people. I mean, if you don't have that, go into finance. I'm not putting finance down, but I think that financial people are not they don't need to be empathetic. In fact, if they're too empathetic, they may forgive you for not paying a loan. But marketers have to be caring about people, fascinated about people, and sensitive to, and then I want them to have digital skills, not fantastic digital skills. By the way, it turns out that they often ask me, must I be a coder, create software? There's low level ways to create software even nowadays, because basically you put together some graphic pictures and they form the software. That the software, as complicated as it is triggered by this little app, and you put it with the right other parts of it, and then you have created a little piece of software for your business. So I think that's a nice skill. But what else? There have been a lot of lists of the kinds of things that make excellent trained marketers. I think I wish they would have a strategy set, a mindset, a long run mindset, not a short run mindset, because remember, the normal salesman outlook is getting a sale, getting the sale. But the point is, the person isn't necessarily ready to buy. You have to have a more holistic view of the situation and the forces that operate on person or a company about buying something. And if you haven't got a holistic marketing mindset, holistic, it sees the environment and the factors that are even leading to a possible interest in buying that car or something else. Well, we have a new thing going on, which is called mapping the journey, mapping the customer's journey to buying something. Your company should really collect a lot of examples of journeys that brought that customer into your dealership, if you have a car dealership, because you'll find that it's made up of touch points. And any touch point could be positive or negative for you. A bad salesman is a negative touch point on the journey, and you lost the customer because of that. So basically, I think that there's a skill in understanding that it's not just a sale, it's the journey that takes place that you have to understand for a sale to take place. I'll stop here on that.
You know, Phil, I have to say before I love what you're saying, because to me it's so authentic to the culture of Kellogg. I hear you talk about empathy, about the holistic mindset, and that's what we talk all the time today. That's what Kellogg has to offer. But what you're saying is reminding me that really is the strong marketing tradition at Kellogg has what is allowed us today to have such a modern culture, because things like empathy and the holistic mindset is what everybody wants. And we are grateful to people like you and the faculty in marketing at Kellogg to bring us there. So that's great. Now there's another question. What would you suggest governments do to recover their severely damaged images in what seems to be a global trust crisis? Moreover, how can the public sector be seen as value added versus inefficient managers of the people's scarce resources?
Yes, there's a big division of opinion about whether government should be kept to a minimum set of very important functions, to build roads and to provide primary education and police and fire people and so on, versus those that want the government to be more proactive. For example, when we had the terrible depression in the 30s, we finally saw that government could really play a role in restoring economic life to a society very badly damaged. And you can go too much one way or another, but we have a terrible divide about that based on the two parties that we have. But I've been thinking more broadly about not only marketing and business, but the systems that we operate in, the two big systems, capitalism and democracy. And each of them I will defend them as the best systems we have and should have, but with modifications. When it comes to capitalism, we know that we still live with people who are poor, 15% of our population. We know that there's a lot of inequality of economic results. The question becomes, is the worker better off today than when he was in 1980? Is he earning more in real terms? And probably not earning more than he earned in 1980. So the question becomes, for capitalism, are the participants, the stakeholders, that is the ones who are affected by the company, are they sharing well in the results of the company? And I have become very interested in Nordic capitalism, the Norway, Sweden, Denmark kind of ideas about capitalism. They are capitalists. These are countries that have very big companies, Volvo was there, and so many big companies. So it's private enterprise, but they took a little different idea. They said that if we pay higher taxes, and it doesn't mean everyone, it's more or less the people who have the money to pay higher taxes. And the money went to making sure that everyone could get a free education, college education, free health. Then families wouldn't have to worry about saving so much money in case of an injury or an illness, and saving so much money about getting their kids into college, that it's better to pay in advance much more in taxes, so those people can pay more, better taxes, and then have happier people. Well, are people happier that way? Well, the fact is, I look at the data, because we have data on how happy people are in different countries. And we also have data on how well they feel, how well-being they are, their health in different countries. Those Nordic countries are the happiest. If you take the top 10 countries that are happy, all the Nordic ones, including Finland and Iceland as well, are happiest countries. And the well-being, just the well-being and health is higher. And they're private enterprise economies. So I wrote an article called, "Is America Ready for Nordic Capitalism?" Now, that's not socialism. One of the political parties is trying to call everything socialism that is improving the capitalism. That is really the difference between what we call free market capitalism and social and well-being capitalism. And I got into that, and then I looked at our democracy, and we certainly have a major problem, and that is you can't become an elected official without getting donors. And if you can get a billionaire behind you, you're going to get elected. So it's not one person, one vote. And therefore, when that candidate is elected, the first thing he makes sure is he never is in favor of any proposition that hurts his donors. Hey, that's not democracy. He's supposed to represent the people. No, donors first. Secondly, he pays a lot of attention to the lobbyists, which are mostly hired guns to get something done. Thirdly, he cares about maybe he does care about his district, but he is not really so free. And right now we're going through a period where we're going to see whether you're more devoted to your job or to what's good for the country. So your question goes back to really, what is the role of government? I got a little off of that, but the government can be, I believe in a proactive government, but with a Congress agreeing or disagreeing to things and so on, and a strong executive who, for example, should the government participate in identifying the future growth industries? Well, I think so, because we want to, we're not going to have economic growth if we stay with the old industries. So what do we do in the United States? A lot of work was done on solar energy. It was very clear to us very early that this is the way to get our energy, solar and wind. And we worked on that. You know, the only thing is we probably lost leadership in solar, even though we were the leader, to China. And by the way, this is another thing, because China is the new equivalent to, it is a great competitor. It's a clever competitor. They're building a position in every country in South America, in Middle East, by offering money for economic development. China says, we want your country, your poor country, to develop. Do it our way. In fact, we're going to send Chinese over to help you, and we're going to send the money over. So the US has this problem. That's a competitor. What are we saying to these countries? Well, we'll send some experts over to help you develop economically, but be grateful that you have freedom. Freedom is what we sell, and democracy. Well, we need a bigger story. Why countries should ally with us. And so in Asia, and I hope to speak next week in Asia again, we had been putting together the Asian countries, Japan and the others, to collect a force that deals with us in China, that will be an allies of us in our dealings with China. But we have to know more. I want more Americans to study China. It's very important to understand what is a great civilization and a great power emerging. Yeah.
I think this is absolutely amazing. We're almost at time. Let me ask you just one more question, but we have like more than 80 questions left. I'll send them all to you because there's also messages from students and co-authors. Just one, given you were talking about government. Given how social networks have strongly influenced consumer market politics, etc., what are your thoughts on how government policy should or shouldn't influence social networks if the consequences can at times have unintended negative social impact?
I don't know if it gets quite to the question that we all have to solve, and that is, what do you do in a sharply divided society where polarization and alternative realities are being seen by different groups, where a big lie can occur and be popular and can be popular before people all know it's a big, big lie, where facts are less important? How do people on one side tell others on the other side, not discuss and share and talk decently with each other? There's so many families now that are divided and don't even talk to each other because of political differences in their view. So it's more than a marketing question of how do you demarket their point of view and market your own point of view. It's so deeply emotional and charismatic in some ways that I don't think I'm answering the question you asked, but I think it's a reality. Once there's an alternative reality, this is President Biden's problem. It's not his problem, it's all of our problems. How do you bring together a united country? Remember, it's a media change. We used to listen in this country to the same things. We read the same newspapers. We watched the same television programs. We had a national mindset, and we could talk to anyone about things. And then as the media became more specialized and everyone could watch the news would come from their favorite stations and someone else's stations. We can't escape the fact that people are going to that the social networking is going on and different networks are created and they don't necessarily communicate with each other. So this is such a big problem. I won't even say more about it, but it's a good question.
Yes. I am so sorry. We are at the end of the hour. It flew. I feel what you're talking is so deep. And I am so proud that, this is the Kellogg faculty we have. And so thank you so much, Phil. Thank you for, you have still such a...
Well, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all the people listening, because among them, maybe many of my former students too. And I owe a great gift or thankfulness to all the Kellogg students from whom I learned so much. we always chose the best students. And I always welcomed their idea. In fact, I even said to some people, there are some students who are my teachers. I can tell in a classroom, they're more my teacher than my student. And I think a school should have the best people it can attract faculty, the best faculty that can be attracted, so that people with their 1 year at the school or their 2 years at the school are first-rate people. And then all the businesses will know where to go for talent. And Kellogg is all about creating that talent that they want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's perfect to finish on this note. Thank you, everybody who connected, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.